right exactly at 3 o'clock, the police arrived. We had a habit of not meeting in the main hall, the main house. The main house was for the boss. So we had to meet outside in the, what do you call it, outbuildings. As we were assembling, the police came in, a van came in, laundry van. Then the police jumped out. They came to the outbuilding where we were supposed to be meeting. I jumped out, Govan and Kathy, through the window, but they were already there, and indicated that one move, we shoot. And then the dogs were also there. So we were unable. We had intention of running through this the window and then down to the river. We were unable. They got us there.
Goldreich, if you know Goldreich, he lived a lifestyle deliberately, what we would call the northern suburbs lifestyle, going out horse riding on a Saturday morning, that type of a thing, and constant traffic of delivery vans and so forth. So we did not think this thing was anything unusual, this dry cleaning van. The farm belonged to the Communist Party. It was a farm that was known to a very small number of people. Very, very small number. The Communist Party allowed it to be used by Comrade Mandela when he was underground. The Communist Party also allowed it to be used by some of the early MK people who had returned from training, but on condition that as soon as they find their places, they should move. I went to Rivonia for purposes of disguise, and then I had moved on to another place in Mountain View, now disguised as a Portuguese. Comrade Sisulu was also there temporarily. He had moved out. We had gone to Rivonia to discuss Operation Mayabuya. A meeting had taken place on a Saturday. Operation Mayabuya document was put there. A counter document was put. That meeting was not conclusive. So we met on Thursday, the 11th of July, to continue this discussion. And we had by that time all moved away from Rivonia. I was brought back on the 10th of July at night to Rivonia, and Comrade Sisulu and them came at about 2:15 to the farm, and the police raided at about 3 and arrested us.
We had used Rivonia too much, and the fact that we could all be arrested there, I think it was a mistake on the part of some of us who felt that let's have that last mistake, last day rather. I think to some extent we were, but these things were inevitable. We had to be arrested at one stage or another. The only criticism you can have, it was rather, well, too short a period. The people who go underground in various parts of the world, they don't go beyond 1 year, 2 years. They get arrested. And I think to us, because it was rather shorter than that, and our plan therefore had shortcomings.
I can't remember. It was quite a shock, of course. But then when you're underground, you know that sooner or later you're going to be caught. Of course, you never know under what circumstances you're going to be caught, but sooner or later you're going to be caught. So the impact is lessened a bit by this knowledge that sooner or later you're going to be caught. But this was too dramatic. They did not recognize me in my disguise. They didn't recognize me immediately. It's only when I spoke that they recognized me. They had come there, obviously, looking for Sisulu. They had some tip-off that Sisulu is going to be there. They didn't expect a lot. Well, I say this because I'm told that immediately they found us all. Colonel Van Wyk, at that time Lieutenant Van Wyk, who was in charge of the Rivonia arrests, made a phone call to headquarters and said, "Ons het 'n jackpot." I was, of course, on the regional command of MK right from the beginning. We made preparations before the 16th of December, identifying places for sabotage, what type of sabotage, whether it should be incendiary or explosives, or simply cutting of wires, so reconnoitering places. And then I personally took part just in two activities. One involved cutting of wires, telephone or electricity, I can't even remember now. And one was an incendiary bomb.
I was to prepare the conference in Botswana. And I was already in Botswana when it was announced that the police, it was wrongly announced, the police had already pinned a notice in my door. It meant that, therefore, once they pin that notice, if they see you anywhere, they will arrest you. That made me to leave the conference before it actually commenced. I didn't meet Oliver, who was also coming to the conference. I had to leave to come home and try and bid this ban so that I can do my work underground in South Africa. It had been decided that I was going to operate in South Africa, and therefore I had to try and avoid being arrested at that stage. I got home, however, found that they had not yet pinned the order, and they however came. I can't remember precisely whether I don't think they came to give me the ban, but the ban, you see, my ban began. I then went underground from that day so that I should operate underground. Kathrada also went underground by orders that he should go down underground. It brought about this new situation that all operations were largely going to be underground.
Well, to be frank, my views were mixed with fear. Fear not only for myself, and that was there, naturally, but also fear for the organization. I thought that we were being a bit uncautious, I don't know what the correct English is. I think that element was there. I thought that not sufficient thought was being given. A small group of people were now directing things. And what really, and of course the other reason was I did not have the aptitude for this type of work. But that's a personal thing. There was one incident, for instance, where we were discussing a certain act of sabotage, whether we should plant an incendiary bomb or an explosive. And I had said, look, this is an area where children play till 10, sometimes 11 at night. And if we plant an explosive, it will kill these children. And the response from one of the MK leaders was, well, comrade, people die in the struggle. And that shocked me, that type of an attitude. Because the idea at the time was not violence aimed at civilians or the security forces. At that time, the emphasis was on sabotage of buildings, government buildings, etc. And that worried me. One of the reasons why I thought I should withdraw. But I must emphasize the element of fear was there, the element of inaptitude for this thing, no enthusiasm for this type of work, more enthusiasm for political work.
The case had provoked great interest internationally and at home. I had no doubt in my mind that the death penalty was going to be imposed because I knew the extent of preparations made to sabotage the material that was ordered, and that in any country this type of a thing would be met by a death penalty, and worse, therefore, in a fascist country. And therefore, the defense had to take into consideration what our situation was. We deliberately decided that the best thing was to attack and openly admit, this is what we've done, this is our aim. We were to use it now, as it were, as an attack on the state. And that is the type of defense we brought about. We agreed all certain things. We defied when they said, what about questions which we thought were incriminating? And we refused to answer questions. That was the line. But we had to say what we thought was right and what would be useful in mobilizing the country, in creating a spirit of revolt in the country. That was our defense.
Comrade Mandela and Sisulu in particular were, leading us towards this realization that this is going to be, it may end in death, but we cannot do otherwise than to conduct it as a political trial. So that in the first day when we were called upon to plead, we didn't just say, I'm not guilty. Each one of us made a one-sentence statement. Some of us said, it is not I who should be on trial, but Foster who should be on trial. That type of a thing. So the tone was set right from the beginning to conduct it as a political trial. It was also decided that those, particularly in the leadership of MK, against whom there's going to be quite a bit of evidence in any case, should admit their participation in things. Now, I was, for instance, charged for being a member of the National High Command, which I never was. I was never near the High Command. And it was felt that there is no point in my now admitting something that was not even true. So that while my defense was political, it did not go to the extent of my admitting that I was involved in MK activities. At the time, of course, I was not involved at all.
Well, it was clear from the discussions we were having with the lawyers that at least 4 of us were going to be sentenced to death. That is Governor Mbeki, Nelson Mandela, Dennis Goldberg, and myself. And we were therefore preparing statements which were going to be used in the event of a death sentence. And but fortunately for us, the judge, who gave us an impression that, at least me, that there was no other sentence he was going to pass. He was, it was shaken. His guns, were moving very fast. And I was wondering, why would he be frightened unless he was going to pass a death sentence? If it was not, why would he be so shaken? So that I was quite sure that he was going to pass a death sentence. My wife had been seen by my lawyer, who said, well, prepare for anything. And this was the situation in which we are. When the final sentence was passed, life sentence, it was like a discharge. because I'd expected something worse.
We were locked up after we were taken back to jail, and we were told that night we were going to, we are going to be in communal cells. They had already told us that we'll be seeing our visitors the next day and the lawyers and so forth. But that very night, they came at about 12 or 1 o'clock and suddenly put on the lights and they said, "Get ready." And then they chained us, handcuffed us, and leg irons. I was chained to Mbeki, I remember. And under very, very strong security, the army, the police, and the prison, we were driven to a military airport, put on the plane and taken to Robben Island. So we were sentenced on the 12th, Friday the 12th of June, and the 13th of June we were already on Robben Island.
We were handcuffed, chained and so on, and on a helicopter. We were together in that helicopter with the police. But one of the policemen was talking to Kathy, saying that, well, you people are not going to stay long there, not because of your efforts, because our government will decide to release you. In fact, he said that, I don't even think you're going to take 5 years. We are not going to allow U.S. matters. This is how he put it. We got there in the morning, and the cells in which they were preparing for us were not yet ready. We were put, I think, in the cells which kept common law prisoners. Well, I must say, for me, a person, I was already relieved. And I was out of Pretoria with all its frustrating appearance and shouting and all that. I was feeling that I am here in a new situation, and I was now determined, no matter how long. And I was free mentally from that moment.
The very first thing that struck us, of course it was very cold and windy and rainy, as Cape Town is at that time of the year. And the very first thing that happened there was, again, the blow that we felt about how cruel apartheid could be. Now, when we landed on Robben Island, I was the youngest of the Rivonia group, and I was the only Indian or non-African. And the apartheid as it applied, when we had to change our clothes, for instance, the regulations provided for Indians and Coloureds to be given long pants, Africans short pants, Africans no socks. And according to regulations, they should not have shoes but sandals. In our case, of course, they made that concession and allowed Count Mandela and them to have shoes, but no socks and short pants. That was the first thing. Then the food. Again, discrimination in food. Porridge, we get the same porridge, but they'd get less sugar. They get no bread. Indians and Colours would get bread, Africans only porridge. And eventually they make a concession that they'd be allowed to buy bread once a year at Christmas time.
To reorganize ourselves in that situation was a new battle, and we formed the structures. We exchanged views. We started with by napping stones in the yard, and the harassment by the warders. But we had taken a decision because we were organized. We were not going to accept harassment by the warders, and we were not going to be pushed. And they were now attempting to charge us. You have to fill in so many wheelbarrows for the type of work we were doing. But we resented this type of a thing, and we wanted to fight this legally as far as this was concerned. But that was the situation. It was not west of the yard. We're still going to the quarries. The quarries, we had to work and load lorries and dig the quarry, but it was a lime quarry. Nonetheless, very difficult. Nearly all of us had blisters in our hands. We were singing in order, like all prisoners, in order to keep our spirit up. But unlike the accepted tendency in jail, we were stopped from singing because they realized that keeps our morale up. The main thing, they wanted to lower our morale by using all sorts of things, but they did not succeed there. Soon the question of charging us collapsed, and very important thing was that when they told us to walk fast, we decided to walk even slower in defiance. They realized that this was difficult. They now recognize the leadership. They wanted to talk to Mr. Mandela and recognize that he was the leader of the group. And they exchanged views and explained to them that we would not accept this type of harassment. And the very fact that they now recognize him as a leader was an important victory for us.
Once you're in politics and illegal politics or underground, you go underground with the realization that you haven't got a long life span or freedom. So psychologically, you know that sooner or later you're going to be caught. Then some of us had been to prison before, if not most of us. So we know what a prison is. And then thirdly, and I suppose most importantly, to us it was a continuation of the struggle in another terrain, another environment. And while we were there, we knew the struggle had to continue. Whereas outside, we could sit at an illegal meeting like this in a small house or something. The enemy is remote. He's just not there. But in prison, he's there 24 hours a day. He's watching over you. So that even if you weaken, you dare not allow yourself to weaken, because you don't want to weaken in front of the enemy.